Good morning, everybody. It's afternoon where I am in Spain, and it's morning in the sunny fall of the United States of America. Thank you for joining me today. This is a really an exciting moment for me. I'm starting this digital residency in cooperation with Princeton and University of Michigan. And my hope with this program was to use music and particular song, just my day job, to talk about headlines that are happening in real time. The opera world where I come from is usually, stories that are 200 or 300 years old, and we've always felt that, of course, they're relevant to today, but I want to actually put that into concrete form. And Kai and Saika, I saw this incredible report on the NBC News with Cynthia McFadden about the Pole Heroes, which you guys are a part of. And it was so inspiring to me. At the same time that I was seeing the lines of people waiting, particularly in Georgia and Texas, and people standing in line for hours and hours. And I thought, this is what patriotism looks like. This is what the American ideal is like in action. So I wanted to speak a bit with you, and we have the incredible gift as well of having Jeffrey Sellers here. Jeffrey, you and your team with the musical Hamilton really put patriotism back on the map in a way that was so poignant and immediate and has touched so many people. You're also a University of Michigan graduate, which is a nice tie-in. I want to start with you, Jeffrey, and I want to find out a little bit from your 9-year-old producer self to today and the incredible pieces that you brought to life leading up into Hamilton as well. What is your sensation going through this year of 2020, leading up to the election and living all these things that we have been living?
Hello, Joyce, and I wish a nice hello to both of our students. I never imagined that I would be able to marry my personal interest in politics, my personal interest in American history and in American government with my profession through my work producing Hamilton. That was a gift. Of course, it wasn't my idea to make the life of Alexander Hamilton into a musical. That was the idea of genius Lin-Manuel Miranda. I, as his producer, was there to support him, nurture him, follow him, and help him everywhere I could. But what I have been able to do over these last 5 years with Hamilton is express my passion for democracy and my passion for creating a more equal America, a more inclusive America. And I think what has been so unique is that everything in the story and in the characters and in the narrative of Hamilton is an expression of our best impulses as Americans. And that's what's been so energizing. And now with this election coming, that feels as if, for me, this is not an election about one candidate or another. This is an election about our democracy or falling into some sort of a banana republic that looks so beneath our potential as Americans. And it's for that reason that we at Hamilton have been so involved in this election campaign, most recently doing a Hamilton town hall for the Biden-Harris campaign last Friday night.
Yeah. It was amazing, actually. and this is the beautiful world that the arts bring into the headlines and into politics in particular. Is it gives us energy, and it helps us give voice to the feelings that we have about the confusion and the fear that I think is pulsing through our country right now. Kai and Saika, you guys are the living embodiment of putting that democracy Jeffrey's talking about into action. You saw a hole, a problem, and you said, I think we can solve it. Can you talk to me? Let's start with you a little bit about that first impulse and how you're feeling in particular now that we're a few days out from the election.
Yeah, well, the Poll Hero Project originally started as an organization called Vote 2020 by Mail, where we were actually focused on getting federal funding for mail-in voting. But eventually, we kind of reached the end of the line of what we could contribute to that project. And as we're talking with election officials about what the biggest problems they were seeing in the election were, the biggest thing we kept on hearing was the shortage of poll workers. For example, Philadelphia is one of the cities we had been talking to the officials in. And in the primaries earlier this year, normally they would have around 8,500 poll workers. They only had 2,500. So that's a massive 6,000 poll worker gap. And just hearing about that huge shortage and how it impacts Americans, if you do have a huge shortage like that, often polling places will close. There will be much longer lines, as you were talking about, and that can really often disproportionately impact minority, low-income, urban communities, which is just something we saw as really unacceptable. And so we decided that with the coronavirus pandemic making it really difficult for older people to work the polls this year due to their higher risk, we needed to get young people, high school, college students to step up and work the polls.
And so, Saika, how did you come into this?
So I actually worked the election in August for the primaries, and I realized that the shortage of poll workers, we had multiple people working in multiple precincts at the same time. And I decided since we're in a college town, I was going to work on trying to get college students registered to be poll workers. And that's when I came across the Poll Hero Project and realized that my goals completely aligned with what they're trying to do. And I decided to sign up and help not only in my city, but like also over.
So, Jeffrey, I'm sitting here putting these two worlds together and imagining the world of the Founding Fathers and Alexander Hamilton looking in on 2020, probably in deep astonishment, but also seeing the bravery of these young people stepping up to perform civic duty, something that hasn't been a big topic in our world, that imperative to do civic duty, and it's happening. What do you think what their impressions would be?
I think that Alexander Hamilton would look in and see something very familiar that would thrill him. Let's keep in mind, Alexander Hamilton moved to the United States of America when he was 17 years old, and the Revolutionary War started approximately 1 year later. So our revolutionaries, the young men and women who founded our country, were in their late teens and in their 20s. We have this perception that they were old and wearing all those white wigs and stuff, but in fact, they were young people. And what is going to make the difference in this election is the actions of our young people. And because I am now obsessed with looking at my Twitter feed and all of the polling analysis every single day, what we are already seeing here 10 days before the election is that the number of young people who have already shown up to vote is far, far, far in excess of what it was in 2016.
It has been explosive, actually, exponentially bigger. And that is because of movements like down in Parkville, Florida, and these young people coming out and saying, this is not acceptable where we're going.
Yes.
Kai, would you talk a little bit about what your peers, what their sensation are? Are they also getting active? Are they feeling this call? Are they busy with their online classes?
I think that young people really are feeling the call right now. Historically, there hasn't been a huge amount of involvement in politics and civic engagement by younger people. It's a generation that hasn't been as involved, lower turnout rates, all that. But I think that that's really something that's going to start to change right now. I've been seeing a huge amount of enthusiasm among young people, which has been really inspiring. I think as a part of all the social movements we've seen this year, just the general kind of imperative that this year has shown for societal change, I think has really energized a huge number of people. And that's been really inspiring for me to see, really incredible. I think that the only reason we were able to get to the place we were able to get as the Whole Hero Project with over 35,000 signups now is because of all that energy, because people are so enthusiastic about doing their part, doing everything they can to help the election. One of the most inspiring things I've seen is that a lot of the people who are stepping up to work the polls are 16 and 17-year-olds who can't even vote yet. And I think in a large part because of that, because they have no other voice in this election, they've been really enthusiastic about stepping up and doing what they can for poll working, for making sure that everyone else has an equal opportunity to vote.
What I love about this for folks in my generation, which I guess it's middle age now, is we grew up in peacetime. We grew up in a time of bipartisanship, more or less. And now we're in another world at the moment. And it's impossible to be a conscious citizen and look at the burden that's falling on the young people and to see how you guys are responding and to not feel that sense of duty hanging on our shoulders as well. So your enthusiasm and commitment is generating up all the way up the generations. And we can talk about whether that's fair or not, that burden is on you, but we are feeling it and we are responding. Saika, you're in a battleground state. You're in Michigan, a native of Michigan, and you're in your 4th year. You're studying engineering in Michigan. And so I'm curious to know what the sensation is there where, I mean, every vote, of course, counts, but in a battleground state, the pressure is on. And so talk to me a little bit about you and your peers there. You're going to be volunteering on Election Day, what you are hoping to see in terms of turnout and in terms of involvement from the folks your age.
We're definitely hoping to see a lot of people come out. No matter what your political opinion is, I think it's very important to make it be heard. We're working with a lot of people. Currently, the university is working with the city hall to do elections beforehand. So we have a place open where students can go in and vote right now and submit their absentee ballots right now. We're trying to prevent long lines, keep it safe, but also let everyone get the chance to vote.
It's super. I feel so full of gratitude that you all are rising to the call like this. Jeffrey, you also produced a piece called Rent. And I did a project over the last few years about war and peace. And I took it around the world. And I did a closing speech. And I would always quote Jonathan Larson, the playwright of Rent, with the quote, "The opposite of war is not peace, but it's creation." And you're a creative mind. Kai, I see also that you're an artist as well. You have a real sense of creativity. Engineering is all about building and creativity. Are you hopeful that we can find a creative solution once we get past the election as well? We're going to need to find a way that bridges are built and that we come together to actually live up to our name of the United States of America. What's your sensation for that?
I'm struck by the notion that when I look back at Rent, which premiered 24 years ago, so many of its themes are still ringing so true today. That notion that the opposite of war is in peace, it's creation. And I'll always have seared in my brain, Jonathan's mission statement, which if I will paraphrase, says, this is all about a community of people coming together and forming a new kind of family in a world that feels like it's ripping apart at the seams. And I wonder to what degree do Bohemians always have to feel that they're living amidst a world that's ripping apart at the seams? My guess is that the Bohemians that you're more familiar with, Joyce, in La Boheme, which takes place, of course, in the late 19th century in Paris, are also a bunch of young people that feel that their world is ripping apart at the seams. And of course, that's embedded in the title, Rent. And to go to your question about creation, what I see is that we on our earth, we have an existential threat. And our existential threat is not about Iran or about Russia or about North Korea. Our existential threat is about global warming. And the number of creative initiatives and endeavors that we must engage with and employ in order to save all of the inhabitants of our earth is going to be dramatic. And for those reasons, I do believe it will be more incumbent upon our younger generation to engage in that creativity, because that's what we're faced with. Are we going to actually save our civilization?
I love that you bring that up, because that segues beautifully into the piece that I've chosen for this particular Sing for Today segment. It segues perfectly into the song that I've chosen for this topic, which is This Land Is Your Land. And it was, of course, written by Woody Guthrie in early 1940s. There's a couple original versions of different ones that he recorded. And it was written really in a response to coming out of the Depression. And there's a verse, all the verses are really poignant, but there's one about seeing people standing in the food lines in the relief office. And as the people stood there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Which is a question I think a lot of our citizens are asking, world citizens are asking. There's also another line that talks about a sign on a wall that says no trespassing. But on the back of that sign, there was nothing. And he says, that's the side that was made for you and me. I think to go into this question, not only that is pregnant and present in this election, is global warming, and where do we go from here in terms of the climate? There has to be an embracing of the other side of that placard, of the other side of that card, where that land belongs to all of us in the sense of humanity. And this land, we're going to have to answer that question of, does it belong to you and me, to us? And if it does, how does that affect our change? I find it really fascinating that if you look at the countries who are responding to this pandemic right now, the ones who are responding best have a community sense about helping each other. And for me, that is the blueprint that is imperative as we go into these next decades. So my question, Kai and Saika, is how you see what your impression of this land being for you and for me, ideally. What do you think are the steps as we pass on to the other side of this election and we go forward, regardless of the outcome of it? What are you anticipating in the next years of your life?
Well, I think one of the most fundamental things is that we really need to make sure that we uphold the strength of our democratic institutions. They're a fundamental part of this democracy, of making sure that we have, free and fair elections, making sure that everyone has equal opportunity to vote, making sure that all these, really, really incredibly important things are held strong, that there's not, a challenge to people to vote, that there's not any kind of, manipulation, there's not any kind of intimidation, there's not kind of any oppression. And I think that if we have a truly equal basis for that democracy, then that is absolutely necessary to creating a land that is, as written, for you and me.
I love that. I'm so glad to have this conversation with you guys today, because it's infusing me with hope. I'm off my Twitter feed at this moment and reading the headlines, and this is my impression is when we can sit and talk one-on-one, we're finding common ground and remembering what our ideals are here. Saika, what are your concerns? What are your hopes? What are your expectations coming on the other side of this election for this land?
I definitely think our work will not be done after the election. Um, we really have to work on educating voters. The thing I learned most from this election process is that a lot of people just don't know about the voting process in general. They don't know how to get absentee ballots. They don't know how to get registered. So after this election, I hope to continue working just to get more voters educated, especially people from places that do not typically have a high voter turnout. Hopefully, we can increase that and make that better.
I find it so inspiring because this directive from the beginning to get the youth out, it's not happening so much from people in charge. It's happening from you guys yourselves. You're motivating each other. You're looking at the landscape and you're saying, we have to make a change. And you're in the trenches doing that. And it's so inspiring. Jeffrey, speaking of education, as Saika was talking about, which is really paramount to everything. That was a cornerstone of Alexander Hamilton's life, and the reading and the writing that he did. Do you think there are more steps that we can take as we go into trying to get past the election, creating more equality here? What are some of the educational steps we can take as individuals? I'm particularly thinking about our relationship to social media and the biases that come with that. What do you think we can do going forward to keep making sure that this land is for both you and me, for us?
Wow, that's a big question that, in some ways I feel ill-equipped to answer as a citizen, as a theater producer. I start with education with Hamilton and our own education program, in which over the past 4 years, we've had a couple 100,000 kids from Title I schools across America coming to see our show for $10 or for free. And as part of that process of seeing the show, they've also been studying the American Revolution and the formation of the US Constitution in their high school sophomore or junior classes. So we've integrated that sense of history, American government, and art. And then that culminates in our kids coming to the theater, choosing one kid, one student from every school to do a performance piece in which they get to use music, hip hop, rap, instrumentation, poetry, scene study to manifest some world of Hamilton, meaning it could be a character from that time that's not in the play. It could be a character in the play dealing with another issue. And that's been such a powerful program for us. And I think it's a great example of how we can use art to relate to social studies and history and English to bring together what it means to be educated and what it means to be a citizen. And when I think about education, I think about, can we help foster citizenship? The act of living in a country and in active ways participating in its policies. I have 2 teenagers and they also say, oh, I hate politics. But I say, let's break it down. When there is a street that is paved for us to drive on, that's policy that was created by our local government, and that's politics. And one of the things I think about is we've got to break down this notion of, oh, I don't want to deal with politics. Well, guess what? If we have internet connection, that's politics, because it was a policy created by a government to allow an infrastructure system so that a cable company or a Google company could come in and bring that into our neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. This is what I love about this moment in time right now is we've been pressed to the wall. We've been looking at the outside of that wall where the sign says no trespassing. Somehow the government has been taken from us, or we have the impression that it has. Well, it doesn't really affect my life. Well, what difference is it going to make? What's one vote? Well, we've seen in the past now what one vote is, and we've seen what happens if we disengage from exactly what you're speaking about. And this is, we no longer have that, well, I wanted to say luxury, but that's not even, we no longer have that liberty where things are just working and we don't have to think about it. It's the moment to be involved and to raise our voices. With that, I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And most importantly, to thank you for the contribution you are making to this world, to your schools, to your cities, to your state, to every student that's come to see Hamilton and participating in that. The effect that that has had is just enormous, Jeffrey, and it will keep ringing out and resonating for a long time. May we please get back into the theater side by side again very, very soon.
Yeah.
Kai and Saika, I just wish you all the best for your continued studies. I know how busy college is and how your workloads must be insane, so that you're adding this on top of it is so admirable. And as I've said before, it just fills me with so much hope. I thank you guys so much. I encourage you to sing along to This Land Is Your Land. Take your favorite version. I've been listening to a lot of them on the YouTube, etc., and it's wonderful. But it's a song to revisit and think about what it says for us today. I thank you so much. Good luck with the election. I don't have to tell you to vote. I know you're on it. And we'll see you guys on the other side. I thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said, no trespassing. But on the back side it didn't say nothing. Oh, that side was made for you and me. In the squares of the city, in the shadow of a steeple, by the relief office, I saw my people as they stood there hungry. I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? I stood and waited in the line for hours to make my voice heard, to claim my power. my ballot to do my duty. This land was made by you and me. Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking on that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and